G'day legends, I'm back in the US, and after a lot of long flights, my jet lag is terrible, so I will keep this one short. But it's been a big few days with the complete occupation of Bakhmut after months of fighting and the freedom of the Russian Federation troops crossing once again into Russian territory today. And we'll talk about all that and some other news. But first, I want to say that the Battle of Bakhmut could well be the bloodiest battle we've seen in the 21st century. Thousands, if not tens of thousands, lost their lives in this city that once housed over 70,000 people's homes. We'll never truly know the cost of what happened here, but the sheer violence, death, hardship of the combatants that fought for this should be acknowledged no matter what side of the conflict you fall on. At the end of the day, these are still humans fighting. Now, was Bakhmut a success? Well, my question is, a success for who? Both sides claim it was doing the same job, to grind down the combatants of both sides fed into the city over many months. We know Prigozhin was playing at games using not only ammunition but his fallen comrades as leverage against the Kremlin, and that the narrative of once a highly strategic city was shifted to one of little value other than symbolic through the Western media. Now, time will tell what the true cost of this was, but we know many thousands now lay in the mud and many more will wear their injuries for the rest of their days. Now let's have a look at the maps, and there's been a few major changes we've seen over the past few days whilst I've been away. So here, of course, in the centre we have Ukraine, the capital of Kiev. Red areas occupied since 22, and purple since 14. This being Crimea, Donetsk, Luhansk. We have Romania, Poland, Belarus, and Russia around here. Now, where we're going to come into is Bakhmut, and this is the region where we've seen the most amount of change. We've seen a little bit of change to the north of Avdiivka, and of course where we're going to talk about later on the video, which is pushing into the Russian Federation as well. But today's the 23rd, but this was updated the night of the 22nd, so this is the most up-to-date deep state map. So let's just roll back to, I believe, the 19th was when I spoke to you last, and this was when Bakhmut was almost under complete control, and then we saw this major shift between the 19th and the 20th. I'd been talking about Bakhmut for months and months, and the day that I'm away, Bakhmut finally has that big push and actually fell. So, and then till the most recent, we must have missed the 21st, and then to the 22nd, we see more of a push down around this MiG-17 statue, and we've seen a number of Wagner and Russian flags raised all over Bakhmut. So we do see a major shift here, and it coming under occupation. We have also seen a shift in this region here, as we've talked about, where the Russian forces pushed back across this waterway here, and then Ukraine did get some territory, and then that's what we saw in those last final days. I did want to talk about what I see a lot of people speculating is a encirclement of Bakhmut and how that is looking. And currently, to my eye, and I'm no, map expert of, military bloody stuff, but if, let's go back, and we were talking about that there was no chance of encirclement somewhere like this. Well, if you're the same person saying, they're not encircled here, I think it's a bit rich to now say that this region now is encircled here. So if you didn't say it was encircled then on one way, how is it encircled now? I'm just not seeing that. I know there's a lot of open terrain to the north and the south, and movements through open terrain, of course, can be a lot quicker, but I don't think that the idea of this tactical surround or strategic surrounding of Bakhmut currently is really something to really hang your hat on. I don't see it, and I don't think, it is either way. I don't think there's surrounded troops in this region in the middle either, but I don't see it as Bakhmut as well, and that's being claimed that Bakhmut is now surrounded by the Ukrainian forces. Like, yes, they're on the flanks, and they are having success on the flanks, but if you weren't going to call it a surround before, I think it'd be a bit rich to call it that now. Now, a bit of news about Wagner in Bakhmut. Prigozhin has said that Wagner will leave Artemovsk, being Bakhmut. It was renamed in also the 20s, and then actually in 2016 as well, so renamed to Artemovsk from Bakhmut back in the 1900s, on the 25th of May to the 1st of June. So at some point during there, the Wagner will move out and it will be handed back the positions to the regular Russian forces. Now, many say the professional side of Wagner PMC are moving their operations in scale to Sudan in larger numbers, as we've already seen that Wagner has been present in Sudan, but also throughout that region more recently. What we are going to do is just compare this map across with the ISW as well. So in this map, they're showing just down to the MiG-17 statue and not through Kromove yet, but up around these other reservoirs as well. So it is showing on this map, I think, more assessed control, definitely down and around where the MiG-17 is here, where this road comes in and meets here, is showing more there, and maybe some more up around Kromove through the road of life as well. So if we take where this reservoir is here, this is this reservoir. So fairly similar, but the claimed control is more. So let's just have a look at Bakhmut on today's map and what we saw on the comparison to last time I spoke to you, which was, I believe it was the 19th, but this is actually said to be the 20th map. So let's just have a look. So as you can see, clearly the amount of assessed control, being the red, is significantly more, as well as the yellow claimed control. So there has been a large step through Bakhmut in this region. And if we have a look, we'll bring up the war mapper from the 20th on the left and the newest one on the right here. And you can just see in the centre of Bakhmut that the centre has come under control of the Russian forces, primarily Wagner Group in this region, and there's a lot of ground out around this MiG-17 statue. This amount of ground isn't being shown on either the Deep State or the ISW, but this is the most recent of these maps. But it is showing too on this flank that Ukraine has had a successful offensive in here and has taken an amount of ground up around here that isn't being shown on the other maps as is. Now, some Russian sources are claiming that Kromove itself is coming under Russian control, but on these maps, you just can't see it. Now, I don't have another Rybar, an older Rybar, to show you today, but we can just compare these, and as it is claiming that they have pushed up to the southern side of this reservoir, which isn't completely being shown here on the Deep State, but as well, the Rybar map, the claimed control being the yellow from ISW, I find is almost identical always to what is being shown on the Rybar as under control. But as you can see, Bakhmut here has come under control of the Russian forces. The first real footage I saw of this coming under control was this view here of Wagner forces with a Russian flag and a Wagner flag getting onto this area of rubble here in Bakhmut and raising the two flags, shooting in the air in a period of celebration. We also saw champagne bottles popped and things like that. You can see firing from this weapon here. So there was an amount of celebration after a very hard fight. Where we're going to look at next is we're just going to zoom out a little bit. So we'll come back to where we are here. So Kiev here, Dnipro here, and we'll zoom in here on the Belgorod region. And as we'll see, only over the past real couple of hours, we've seen this grey area pop out here in the Russian Federation. Now, what is this? Now, this is on the Deep State. So we're going to have a look at this compared to the Rybar of this region. I found this interesting. So we're just going to have the Kozinka here, Klotovo in here, and we're just going to use those to line up. So this is the Rybar Russian sources. We've got Klotovo, Kozinka here. And as you can see, the Rybar Russian source is actually showing that Ukraine has made significantly more territory in this region than is being shown on the Deep State Western source. So where we see this funny bit of border here at this right angle, it's saying that it's right up into this region, around Kozinka and up to Klotovo. So down through more of this region here, down along this road. Although the Deep State shows they've pushed to the south of this road into some smaller areas here. So what is actually the area known? Somewhat unknown at this point, but we will talk more about this. But there's propaganda today, just the propaganda machines have been in absolute full force, and how things actually went down is currently unknown, but there's a lot of speculation. So we saw a group named the Freedom of Russian Legion cross into Bryansk earlier this year. Well, today we saw a similar operation, but in greater numbers and staying for a longer period. To the point of this video, I believe that these gentlemen are still within that region. Now, This first broke today with footage coming out of said to be Russian border guards laying lifeless in their offices amongst paperwork and passports. And more footage has emerged of several armoured vehicles, including a tank crossing into Russian territory. Now, very interestingly, amongst these is at least one Western supplied MRAP and Humvees, along with said to be 80 personnel. So let's have a look at some of this footage. So this footage was released here. This is actually, I believe, on the Ukrainian side, but along this road here, about to push in through the Russian side. So as you can see, there's several vehicles here lining up, ready to push on through. Now, this next clip is actually geolocated to here, and this is of, at this point, a tank rolling around in here. Now, this footage is actually very difficult to see where the tank is, and you really have to zoom in and just let your eyes look for something moving. The tank is right here where my cursor is, and at first this was unknown which country's tank this actually was, but later on we've seen photographs of a tank with Ukrainian colours on it. So this tank moving in around here, and this was geolocated to here, so in the Russian Federation at this border checkpoint here. This is where it crosses over, and this is operating in and around here. We have a number of other footage as well, geolocated from here as well, of these vehicles and these at least 3 troops here moving through where this checkpoint is. And this is a Humvee here. I'm unsure what sort of vehicle this is here. Might just be a regular 4-wheel drive, painted green, and this could be an MRAP here, but I can't confirm what sort of vehicle that is with those troops as well on the side. Now, the first footage we saw of an MRAP was this come out, but this, of course, doesn't show it to be anywhere, but we'll talk about that a little bit later on, as these Russian Legion guys are here with the MRAP in the background with no distinctive real markings on it for Ukraine, but you can see the yellow arm tape and then this in the background. And we had this video come out as well from the Legion, being really the first introduction to this in a large scale and exactly how this operation went down. Now, notice these guys do have Western weapons, M4 style weapons, and things like multi-cams, and of course cams and helmets and stuff like that can be bought, but these weapons are a Western supplied weapon. Whether they were supplied directly or not is something else to know, but they're talking about how Russia, where the trajectory is going, and how they want to be free and operate in a free country. That the freedom has no place in Putin's Russia from the Kremlin, amongst the lies and the censorship and restrictions of freedom. And we know that Russia has a very tight restriction on media. So does Ukraine, but Russia is sort of the next level up again. And here where they're saying that the officials' wallets are meant more than just the individual's rights in Russia. Things like oligarchs operating in around and owning things in some level of a dictatorship. Donations and smokes. Anyone who's a soldier knows that smokes are critical in this as well. But saying that they are wanting more support, so reaching out to people. We'll talk about this in a second, and that Russia will be free. And at the end is their logo for this Legion. I have this video here from inside of the Russian Federation, as that the key to the border is broken in half. And as we saw, these soldiers are wearing a large banner like this. This guy's got it on his body armor, but I've also seen them on their shoulder arm as well. This is marking them that they are these Legion soldiers. This gentleman here, this isn't the first time we've actually seen him in the public eye. We've seen this guy before, and some of the photographs and videos when they crossed into Bryansk as well, calling him that Grandpa Putin is defunct, and you can hear fighting going on in the background that it'll turn into maple syrup. So what is actually currently happening? Well, it's sort of unknown. We've had reports the troops have dug in and are fighting, and we've also seen Russian Frogfoot fighter aircraft and attack helicopters working in this region. There is a rumour that a Russian helicopter was downed, but there's been no evidence or footage surfaced yet, and the local authorities are saying that it was a false claim. Russian sources are claiming this attack is a distraction from the loss of Bakhmut over the weekend, and that they are working to eliminate the forces. As they are saying, this is a Ukrainian armed forces sabotage group. The governor of Russia's Belgorod oblast announced what they call a counter-terrorist operation in the region, which can enforce things like ID checks, curfews. It's very similar in ways to martial law. The governor has said the armed forces of the Russian Federation, together with the Border Service, the National Guard, and the FSB, being Russia's security service, are taking the necessary measures to eliminate the enemy. And we have had rumours that Moscow was sending down guys from the FSB to conduct counter-terrorism operations. Now, the Ukrainian advisor to the head of the Ukrainian's presidential office, Mikhailo Podolyak, has stated that it has nothing to do with the cross-border operation, tweeting, "As you know, tanks are sold at any Russian military store, and underground guerrilla groups are composed of Russian citizens." Now, this is poking fun at Russia's claims about the 2014 independent groups during those annexations and invasion. A spokesman for Ukraine's military intelligence, Andriy Yusov, has said the operation conducted by the Freedom of the Russian Legion and the Russian Volunteer Corps aims to liberate these territories from Putin's regime and push back the enemy to create a certain security zone for protecting Ukrainian civilians. Yusuf had told CNN that the units that had crossed the border were part of the defence and security forces in Ukraine, but said in Russia they are acting as independent entities. So basically saying that while they're in Ukraine, they are part of the defence and security force, but as they've gone into Russia, they are independent entities. I'm not really sure how this works. Now, this mission is being heavily celebrated by Ukrainian accounts, and if the goal was distraction, then it definitely worked. There are many intelligence services working in Ukraine, both foreign and domestic, and cross-border operations can definitely be a valuable way to gain support from the other side and potentially recruit more Russian citizens to rise up, but also to sow seeds of doubt and security concerns in the defence of the country, not only in the current special military operation, but also across the border and how safe that security actually is. Now, was this an armed forces of Ukraine operation? Well, it definitely isn't the first time we've seen troops cross borders in this war, but I do think, at least on the surface, an operation like this with Western vehicles and weapons wouldn't be a risk just due to the potential political fallout that these aren't meant to be used within the Russian Federation. That said, state-backed militias operating somewhat independently are common and have been common throughout this conflict from 2014, on both sides of this conflict, giving a degree of separation from the state. Now, an operation like this is incredibly dangerous, and I do somewhat doubt the claims of being dug in. Digging in positions isn't just something you whip up. It takes a lot of time, but they could have definitely taken up positions, and I don't know how long they could stay looking at things like resupply. But just as I'm writing this, there are videos and photos being released from Russian groups that claim to be a captured American MRAP, the same one we saw moving through the border into Russia, as well as claims that they have eliminated 39 of the troops that have crossed, but none of that is backed up except for the photographs of the MRAP. That said, other than some details, not actually that much is known on the specifics of this, but there's a hell of a lot of fiction being sold as facts from the typical blue check marks on Twitter with flags in their bios. Now, will this go anywhere? Most likely not, but the mission was probably never to actually do that. In my opinion, it is to draw Russian troops from other areas, using it as a probe to see how the Russian forces would actually react, and also a source of propaganda to gain support and sow those seeds of doubt amongst the Russian populace in a war that is already growing in unpopularity. And it has worked, as we've seen huge traffic jams leaving the region and locals moving to air raid shelters, some of which have been locked, with Russian groups heavily criticising the defence throughout all their online chats. Lastly, what we have is the most recent intel update from the UK MOD, saying Russia is highly likely creating a new elite attack aviation group, codenamed Storm, to operate over Ukraine. The unit is likely to consist of at least one squadron of Su-24 Fencer and Su-34 fullback fighter bombers and a squadron of attack helicopters. The mix of aircraft types suggests the groups will have a primary role of ground attack missions. Credible Russian media reports suggest that the Russian MOD aim to attract highly skilled and motivated pilots by offering a large pay incentives and opening recruitment to retired aviators. The creation of a group highlights how Russia assesses its regular Air Force squadrons have severely underperformed in their core function of conducting airstrikes on Ukrainian lines. Now, this has been very true. Russia being unable to get air superiority was an embarrassment, not only in the first couple of days, but now 18 months into this war is something that is absolutely no one saw coming. Russia does have a large air force, and one that we thought was very capable and has shown at times can be very capable, but it's its interoperability isn't there to actually work with other elements, both ground and other elements in the air on SEAD and DEED missions, which we've talked about to take out Ukrainian air defense. It just isn't there. Therefore, getting that air superiority just has not happened, and unable to do that. Russia still does have a lot of pilots and a lot of aircraft. And, we do know that Russia has lost aircraft throughout this, but hasn't lost that many for the numbers that we know they've had. And we really just haven't seen the Air Force involved at all. And this comes only a day or two after the confirmation of newer fighter aircraft from the West coming into Ukraine, being primarily people are keying that the F-16, although from everything I've read, there could be other, options still available on the table. I know people are pushing for F-16s, but there are other Western aircraft that could be maybe more suited to this. And in Biden's statement, he did say, Western platforms. So we're not really sure in this. But this is something, if Russia can actually sort out their, air superiority, air attack stuff in this Storm Elite unit, they're calling it, that could make a big difference to the upcoming offensives. But what will we see in that? We don't know. We know that the time that Russian pilots spend in planes is significantly less than like an American pilot. It's way less, and their ability to do those SEAD and DEED missions with anti-radiation missiles is greatly reduced from what we saw in things like the initial invasion of Iraq. So this is interesting, but we will see where this goes, and we'll see where all this goes in the coming days, coming months. But legends, that's it from me. If you'd like to support me, links down below, but never feel obliged. So look after yourselves. If this video seems a bit cut up, I filmed the whole thing and my batteries in my recorder went flat in 5 minutes in, so I'm piecing a couple of bits together. But look after yourself. I hope you're having a great day, and I'll speak to you soon. Okay, thank you. Bye-bye.